welcome to Moja Sports. My name is Idris Hamoud. Our guest today is Mr. Roger Williams. Welcome, Rogers.
Hi.
Yeah, okay. Roger Williams. Welcome, Rogers. Hi. Roger, could you tell us something about your early life?
How early would you like? Start off, I was born in 1939, so I'm pre-war. The good vintage. But my first memory, I suppose, is being dug out of the rubble of our house, which was a bomb actually landed on our air raid shelter. We weren't in there, fortunately, because they found some of it half a mile away. That's my earliest recollection. Other recollections of the war. My mate Gary, round the corner where we lived once my mother had found some accommodation. He had a Great Dane, and Gary used to come round with Flicker the Great Dane to call for me, and we would go out. We weren't as tall as the Great Dane, so we would hang on to one of his ears each. That apart, obviously it was the build-up to the invasion of France. We had a continual stream of US soldiers trudging past the house, obviously on their way towards the invasion on the south coast. They were either going to the Cardiff docks or to the train station to embark. But the luxury for us was the fact that US soldiers carried sweets. So there would be an eternal cry going up, "Got any gum, chum?" to see if we could elicit any candy from them, which we usually did. But that really was the early part of my life. And then in 1950, I went to grammar school, and they introduced me to the fun of cross country.
Yeah, okay. You mentioned this part of being pulled out of a rubble. I bet that was during the World Wars, during the Second World War, something. How was life then for you and your family, or how was life during that time generally?
Well, my father was in India with the RAF. So my mother had to find us accommodation. Fortunately, there was plenty of family in the area, so we just got through it, and that was that. You had ration books, but as a kid, you didn't realize that there was anything different as far as food was concerned. If you weren't old enough to remember food in the 1930s before the war, then this was just the normal amount of food you could have. Okay. So that's it. Not until you were sort of coming up towards your teens, you didn't really know much about it. I mean, the war had ended, but there was still rationing, and that's probably why we were all a lot slimmer than we are today.
Yeah. So, I mean, how did you get involved into athletics? How did you start?
Well, in school, um, basically, I was too small and too light to be any use playing rugby. I played a bit of cricket, which rose to the exalted position of being playing for the school second 11. But apart from that, I ran. It wasn't that easy then because I'm an asthmatic. I've been an asthmatic since I was a kid. But in those days, you didn't have the inhalers, etc., that you've got now. If an asthma attack was coming on, you just had to sit down and wait it out, basically, which didn't do a lot for your performance as a runner.
Did we have athletic clubs? Did we have
Yeah,
tracks during that time?
yeah. I was a member of a club called Birch Grove Harriers. Our opposition in Cardiff was Roath Harriers. But we both got on together and eventually merged into Cardiff Athletic Club.
Okay. Did we have tracks, or we just met up? You guys met up in a park and trained, or did we have?
Oh no, very posh. We had a track.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
It was cinder. In those days, you didn't have synthetic tracks. It was a cinder track. When it rained, it was very messy.
Yeah.
You might just as well have been running cross country when it rained. But yeah, it served. Yeah, I can remember doing reps on it. In particular, I can remember I was doing 400 reps, and there was a UK international sprinter doing some bend work over the other side of the track. And I could literally feel the track shaking with every step he took. He was so powerful. It was a guy called Ron Jones, who was Welsh international and UK international 100, 200 meter sprinter. And sorry, you were going to say something.
Yeah, no, nothing. I mean, I'm just listening to you. Well, what I wanted to come to is you mentioned of cricket and rugby. Can you tell us a little bit about those sports that you played apart from athletics?
Yeah, well, I played cricket moderately successfully. I did have a habit of being as I was supposed to be a batsman. I did have a habit of trying to hit the ball out of the ground about the third stroke, never playing myself in properly, which used to upset the teachers no end. But that apart, rugby, I mean, but when I left school, I was only, I was under 9 stone. I mean, basically, anybody in rugby who wanted to run through me ran through me because there wasn't enough of me to stop them. I mean, but the only time I can remember actually stopping someone with a tackle was what would be a totally illegal tackle these days, i.e. I went in with my shoulder and he wasn't much bigger than me, and I hit him in the midriff, and I heard the air escape as I winded him totally. But you couldn't live on that. So, you know, running, I so long as I could manage the asthma, running at least I could do and probably not being very big or heavy was an advantage. So long as I was doing, distance, middle distance and longer.
Are there any memories of early races that you took part, or early events, or,
Well,
in your younger days? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we were training when what was then the Empire Games, but it's now the Commonwealth Games, took place in Cardiff in 1950s. I can't remember the exact date, but they laid track at the rugby ground, Cardiff Arms Park, specially for it. And we were all sent down there to train, to bed the track in. The one thing I will say is that we'd never had showers quite like it, because Cardiff were a top team and they had really good showers, whereas the ones at the stadium emitted a dribble of water every now and then if you were lucky. But now that apart, I suppose the two things that I can remember really, the Welsh Games after the Empire Games, as was then, had a lot of stars in it. And one of those I remember seeing close up and actually being walking around on the inside of the track while he was racing was a guy called Herb Elliott, who never lost a mile or 1,500 meter race in his career.
Yeah.
He was pretty famous. The other event that really I remember most, the race I remember most, was in South America. There was a round the houses race on New Year's Eve, and a guy called Bernard Baldwin decided we ought to have one in Wales. So he inaugurated the very first round the houses race round was it Mountain Ash up in the valleys.
Yeah.
And I took part in that. I can't remember who the runner was that came down. They lit a flame at the grave of a legendary runner from the 1800s, a guy called Gito Nydd Bran, who could run evidently from A to B, which was quite a long distance in the time it took for the kettle to boil on the fire. No one actually specified how big the kettle was, mind, but they ran the Nos Galan races then, when they started, used to start at 5 to midnight, and you ran the new year in. And you had lots of people lining the streets of Mountain Ash with pints of beer, offering you a drink as you went past. But that one was won by a guy from Windsor called Stan Eldon.
Okay. Okay. Well, your early years were in Cardiff, and somehow along the line you moved from Cardiff to London. And when was this move, and which athletic clubs were you involved in before you finally came to the club where you are at the moment, which we'll talk about a little bit later?
Well, we moved from going back to that. I met my partner Christine through running, and we moved in about 1985, 86 to the Romford area, Essex. And then in 1987, we moved over to our present house in Uxbridge. And when we'd been members of Ilford Athletic Club while we were over in East London, and when we moved to Uxbridge, Christine joined Uxbridge Ladies, and I, being a bit older, I used to run with the girls, but basically trying to set a pace for them, because whilst I've never been any good as a runner, I could actually set a reasonable pace from the point of view of, if someone said to me, turn out 70s for 400, I could go out and run 70 for 400. I couldn't go much faster, but it served a useful purpose for Peter, who was the coach for Uxbridge Ladies. Then Uxbridge Ladies amalgamated with Hillingdon AC, and as they say, the rest is history.
Yeah, okay. I mean, Hillingdon AC was started in October 1966, and it was as a result of two clubs, Finchley Harriers, which is a very old club that started in 1877, and Ruislip and Northwood Athletic Club, which started 1951. So the amalgamation of these two clubs is what is today Hillingdon Athletic Club, and we still support as Hillingdon, the Finchley 20 that started in 1933 is still being supported by Hillingdon Athletic Club. So around what time was this when you got involved with Hillingdon Athletic Club? Around what time was this?
I can't remember when the amalgamation took place, but it was, I think it was in the 80s, in the later 80s, and when the amalgamation took place, Peter, the coach, decided that he'd had enough, and I just sort of dropped into a coaching role. And I've been standing by the side of the track in the pouring rain and freezing cold ever since.
Yeah, I mean, we have stood together. Not as many years as you have done, but some of the athletes that you coached, could you tell us? I mean, it's not fair on our coach to be asked, specific athletes that you coached, but generally, could you just tell us about some of the athletes you coached, the levels they have gone to?
Yeah, well, I think the three best known probably would be Sue Miles, as was. She's Susan Monaghan now. She got an England vest running on the road. It was in Balmoral road races, I think. She ran for England. One of the other members of the team was some bird called Radcliffe. Ms. P. Radcliffe was in the team that day. And then from there, At the same time, I had Julia Bleasdale was training with us. And Julia obviously ran in the Olympics in London in the 5,000 and 5,000 and 10,000 meters. And Joe Pavey in both of those races, I think, finished 7th as the first European home. And Julia finished 8th, just behind Joe, as the second European home. So that was quite good. And then my assistant these days is Michaela Hutchison, as was now Michaela Mayer, and she got very close to getting a vest. You know, she was unlucky that there were a good number of very good 800-meter women at that particular moment. But I mean, she ran in the trials. She had to run up against Kelly Holmes, which didn't do her chances too much good, but she ran 2:04, which is still a pretty respectable time now.
Yeah, sure.
And at the time, they had, or one of them, they had a B final as well as the A final, and she missed getting into the A final the one year by a matter of point something of a second. But then she went out and very comprehensively won the B final, which is not bad when you consider there's only 8 in a race. So you know, it was a good result, and it was a very thrilling result from my point of view, being at the side of the track watching. Since then, I mean, I think you know most of my group, and I mean, I do remember one day you came to me. You'd only just appeared at the club, and you came to me. You said you had a stringy-looking youth with you, and you said, "This is Mohammed. He wants to run with you." And I said, "Okay, you know, what have you? What's your times? What distance?" So he said 1,500 meters. He said, "I've done 3:56." And I must admit, at the time, I thought, that sounds quite useful. But then you know, and this may be prejudiced, I don't know. But I thought, well, where did he run it? You know, because it could have been somewhere on a track which could or could not have been measured properly. You didn't know what the timing was like. So I said to him, "Oh, that's good. Where did you do that?" Oh, he said, in the Olympics last year. I thought,
3:46.
Yeah.
3:46.
The track was probably the right size, and the timing was probably pretty good as well.
Yeah.
But, these are the sort of things that actually make the whole thing worthwhile. And that and the infamous Team Rog Christmas meal, when we all go out for a meal, except we couldn't this last Christmas. So some bloke called Boris was stopping everybody going out, even though he'd said everybody could.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was Mohammed running for Somalia at the 2012 London Olympics. He ran 3:46 for 1,500. Roger, you know, as coaches, sometimes we get these youngsters that do very well in the younger age groups, and somehow they don't transit to be seniors as our expectation. From your experience over the years, what do you think? What's happening?
Well, yeah, until kids have matured and actually become adults and in an adult's body, all that happens beforehand can be very misleading. You look at some of the kids that come down and they are flying, but you look at their power to weight ratio. They have started developing some muscles, but they're still basically in a kid's body carrying a kid's weight. So they've got some power there, but then as they mature, they get heavier and older, and the power to weight ratio shifts. Guy used to coach at the track called Terry, who his famous saying was always, "Yeah, they're fine, they're doing great. Bring them back when they're adult runners and I'll see what I think of them then." And it is true, for everyone that comes through, 50 or 60 won't. And it's purely and simply, well, there's two things. One, they lose interest, or they're not prepared to put in the work that's needed. When it comes easy when they're kids, it can be very disappointing for them when they suddenly realize that as they get older, they've got to put more and more work in. They can't just turn up at the track twice a week and be stars. They've actually got to train 6 days a week. They've got to put in some mile. I mean, I'm talking obviously middle distance.
Yeah,
but they've got to put in some mileage during the week. They've got to do things like tempo runs, which mean that they've got to perhaps do 6 miles a mile just to warm up, and then 4 miles at their 10K pace and another mile to ease off. And they've got to do a couple of those a week. And they just can't cope with it. Either they can't cope with it physically and they start getting injuries, or they just can't cope with it mentally. They can't, I can't do that all the time. And so they vanish. But if you can get them to come from 15, 16, and you've still got them when they're 20, 21, you've got a chance.
Okay, thank you. Roger, like myself, you are also involved a lot with officiating, coaching and officiating. I mean,
I'll stick with the coaching. You can do the officiating.
Tell us something about, the officiating you do and what involves and how much of your time does it involve in all this?
Well, if you're going to coach properly, you're going to be doing something with it every day, be it looking at what people are going to be doing on the next track session, working out schedules for the coming few months, finding new sessions, because we're all, if you're worth your salt as a coach, you'll always be looking to find that new session which is going to really hit them. you know, a year or two back, I came up with one that I'd read, which they all really love now. That's the session of 5 times 300. But 5 times 300, and they should be trying to go flat out every time, because they get 5 minutes recovery after the first one. But then the next one, they get 4 minutes and 3 minutes and 2 minutes. And if they've done it properly, there shouldn't be that much difference in their time for the first one and the last one. And they certainly shouldn't be able to talk for at least 5 minutes afterwards. That's the first time I had that session. I did actually have athletes crawling off the track at the end.
Okay. If you look back now as a coach, I mean, is there anything you could have done different?
I'm sure there must be. You know, this is I thoroughly enjoy coaching. I love it, love doing it, but it's always a little bit frightening as well to think that as the coach, you are playing with a young person's goals and aspirations in life. And really, you're just experimenting with them. You are trying out the latest thing you've heard to see if it works. And you're using them as the guinea pigs, which is a hell of a responsibility if you actually sort of sit and think about it too much.
Yeah.
But as far as officiating is concerned, I steer clear of that. I have the greatest respect for all the officials. I mean, we've got one of our officials in our club who we were at the English schools in Bury St Edmunds watching the javelin when she managed to stop a javelin with, I think it was her left arm, and they had to cut the javelin off at either end and take her to hospital with the remaining piece still straight through her arm. Anyone that gets in the line of fire of those things, I mean, you know, has my greatest respect. I don't think I'd want to be trotting around out there while people were throwing things at me. But no, hats off to them. They stand out in the rain and snow and etc. even more than we do as coaches. Except they don't have to do it twice a week. It's just when matches come up.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. This is just almost the same. I mean, a younger Roger Williams. What could you?
Was there one?
Okay, a younger coach.
I've forgotten. Yeah.
Well, what advice could you give? I was just phrasing in a different way. I was just trying to ask, what advice could you give a younger Roger Williams? Turns up, wants to be a coach. What advice could you give him?
I would ask questions. Are you prepared to be there every time, every night of the week that there's a session on? Go to every athletics match where they're running. Be there for them when all the wheels come off. When they've gone to a match and they're expecting they're going to do this, they're going to do that, and it doesn't work. You've got to be able to pick the pieces up and put them back together and reassemble them and convince them that they can do it. It's all very well having, anyone that wants to can sit down and write out a load of schedules, but you have to have the mindset that you want to help whoever it is and whatever their ability, be they the worst no-hopers in the world who have no chance of ever doing anything spectacular at all. You still need to be able to be happy to try and help them to be the best that they can be. That I think is the thing. If you go into it looking for glory for yourself by the achievements of your athletes, go away, don't bother.
All right, thank you. Now, well, I've known you for quite a while now, Rog, and
you have my condolences.
You are not the type that misses training sessions, whether it's rain or no rain, day in, day out, unless you travel somewhere and you let us know that you'll be away for a few days or something. You are there every training session. I mean, what motivates you? Where does all that dedication come from, especially at your age? Where does that energy come from?
It's kids. They keep me from remembering how old I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoy myself with them. How many 81-year-olds do you know who can say that they have a group of friends who, and I mean friends as opposed to just people, people that you bumped into, who go from 13, 14-year-olds up to 35-year-olds, who you can meet up with a couple of times a week and have a good laugh and a good joke and a bit of fun with. It keeps you from remembering how old you are.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if I don't ask you this question, Roger, I think I'm not going to do you justice. I just have to ask you this question. And this is your love and commitment for your dogs. Yeah. And I have told you, I met friends in north of England. I met them. Oh, there you go. They're sitting. Your dog is sitting there next to you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have told you about this friend I met somewhere in Newcastle. And the moment I told him about, oh, I'm with Hillingdon Athletics, he's asked me, oh, is Roger still there? And I said, yes. Does he still have his dogs? I said, yes, sure. Yes, he has his dogs. So how and when did this love for your dogs start?
Well, I've been around dogs all my life. When I was probably 9 or 10, my father had always had dogs. We didn't have a dog then. He'd not long come back from India and Burma. And a policeman friend of his had an Airedale, and he wanted to be able to show the dog and for it to be a champion, etc. And it had a slight defect in the jaw area, and he just wanted to get rid of it. No use to him. So my father said, "Well, we'll have her," and from then on, I can't remember really very many times when I haven't had a dog around the place. We've had a couple of cats as well, but and then so 20 odd years ago, we'd been going skiing every year, and I developed a passion to have a Siberian Husky, because you saw a lot of them in the Alps. And I went to Brighton and bought the first one. That the following New Year, I'd always been on at Christine about going to do the Noscallan races down in Mountain Ash, which they'd gone wimpy by then. They'd started running them in the early evening instead of running at midnight, as they should have. But we went down, and the whole idea was that I would run the men's race, and she would look after our young dog, and then I would have the dog, and she would run the women's race. But when we got there, we found there were only 3 women entered, and they decided they'd run the whole lot together. So I said, well, you run the race, and I'll just run at the back with our dog then, Tasha. And before the race started, they had a race commentator going up and down, just interviewing athletes that were lining up, etc. And he saw me with the dog, and he said, so he got me on the microphone. He said, "Oh, is the dog running?" I said, "Yeah, well, we're going to jog along at the back." And he wanted to know where we'd come from, and how we knew about the Noscallan. I said, well, I ran in the very first one, and the race commentary, once the race started, mainly consisted of where the dog was and how the dog was doing. The athletes, I'm afraid, got a bum rush that year. They hardly got mentioned. It was all about where the dog was, how the dog was doing, and start shouting, the dog's coming into the high street. It's the only time as a runner I've ever had the pleasure of running down between down a street with just lined with a crowd either side who were cheering their heads off for the dog. And now we're on our 4th dog.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Who was this guy, by the way?
Yeah.
Who was this person in Newcastle that was?
I just met him. I mean, we went for the Great North Run, and we did a park run there because the race was on a Sunday, and we were there, I think, on a Saturday. We were there on a Saturday. We had nothing to do, so we said, okay, let's go to the nearest park run and just do a 5K. So in the process, after the run, I met this gentleman, and we became friends running the 5K. We had a chat, and after we finished, we had this conversation. I mean, which club are you from, and all this thing. He's coming from the Leeds side. He said he's around Leeds, but unfortunately, I never kept any contact or never took a number or anything. Just a conversation.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
I could try and work out who the hell this is now.
Now, over the years, Roger, are you seeing any change in our sports? Is there any change in our sports that you see and you think, aha, 20 years ago it was this is what's happening?
Well, you mean apart from the go fast shoes?
Yeah, apart from the shoes, yeah, no, not about the shoes, no.
No, it's basically it's the same. There are a lot more distractions for youngsters now. But if they go through the 17 to 20 area and come out the other side still as enthusiastic as they were when they went in, you know you've got someone worth bothering with. But the advances have been the tartan tracks, obviously, the advances in technology and etc. I've still got my stopwatch that I used to train with. I think I've shown you.
Yeah.
Which is 60 years old now, because it was a 21st birthday present from an auntie. Wow. But now, now people will look at it and sort of, ooh, what's that? They wouldn't have, the average punter now would look at it and wonder what it was. They wouldn't know it was a stopwatch. They certainly wouldn't know what it'd been through. But those are it's technology advances.
Distraction really for the youngsters
are the only difference.
Yeah.
If the kids are motivated, then they'll put in the work, and it's no different, really. It's just that probably coaching has advanced. You get people doing things now that you would never have thought they were capable of doing 20 years ago, much less sort of 40 or 50 years ago. But that apart, nutrition is better. We better understand recovery. It's no longer a question of just go out and run until you fall over. But then again, I probably came into it about to say, well, my interest in athletics came about the same time as the sport, distance running was revolutionized by a guy called Emil Zatopek. He would go and run 2400s in the morning, first thing. But then he would then go and do another 2400s in the afternoon, after lunch. And then, being as he was probably not very tired, he'd do another 20 in the evening. And that would be a day's training. And that really, I think, revolutionized the sport when people realized that's the sort of work you've got to put in. Not to that extent, obviously. He was a one-off.
Yeah.
But the principle is there that the talented amateur with a capital A, their days were over. They couple of times a week and could be world class, no longer was that any good. I mean, the guy I mentioned earlier was one of the people who put a stop to that, Herb Elliott. I mean,
yeah.
he was trained by Percy Caruti. He used to run sand dunes all day. And I don't think you've had the pleasure of going to Merthyr Mawr with your guys, have you? Down in South Wales.
No.
No, you haven't had the pleasure of what we knew then as the 40-footer, but is now known as the Dipper.
Oh.
But one rep up that will kill you, let alone having to do 10.
10 of them. Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Rog. We're heading towards the final aspect of this, final part of this interview. And I normally have 5 questions that I'm going to ask you. And then we'll conclude with, if there's anything else you want to share with us at the end of that time, this is your time, this is your space. So my 5 questions: 1, your favorite holiday destination and why?
France, the French Alps, a Greek beach, and wherever the international athletics championships are taking place that year.
Okay. Food. What's your favorite?
Oh, I like food. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your favorite? What's your favorite food? I mean, if you are coming to visit me, what could you like me to put on the menu?
Oh, are you paying?
Yes, sure. Yes.
Fillet steak then. But no, as far as food is concerned, there's very little that I won't eat. All I ask is that it's prepared well, with love, and is presented so that it looks interesting and I want to dig into it. And what it is, you know, be it snails in garlic, or, as I say, fillet steak, or a simple pasta, or a rice dish.
Yeah,
I don't mind. So, as I say, so long as whoever's prepared it knows a little bit about what they're doing and has prepared it well and with love and presented it to me so that it makes me think, wow, this is nice. I'll have some more of that.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any hobby that you have that we don't know about? I mean, we know about athletics, we know about coaching, we know about it. Is there a hobby, something that you spend your time with that we are not aware of?
No, the only thing I do apart from walking a doggy twice a day and presenting myself at various athletics events all week, whilst we've been locked down and not allowed, I've started researching my family history.
Anything interesting coming up?
Apart from a long line of publicans,
Yeah,
run a long line of people running pubs. I'm not sure. I'm still waiting to find. I haven't yet found sort of any relationship to the Welsh princes of long ago or anything like that, or Hillingdon, but I'll keep searching.
Do you have a specific session that you give to your athletes, maybe to see the level of fitness or test the performance, or something you have as a coach specific to you and your athletes?
One that always makes them sort of turn a little bit sort of white is if they say, what we doing tonight? And I say, well, we'll do 2 minutes to start. Because that gives you an idea. If you do it once every few months, a couple of months, you can see if they're improving or not. And basically, you blow the whistle for them to start, and they have to run around the track and get as far as they possibly can before you blow the whistle again to say 2 minutes is up. And when you're running like that, you don't really know how much time has passed. All you know is that you've got to try and keep going as fast as you can until that idiot blows the whistle. Which is it's a good session. And as I say, as I said earlier, the 5 times 300 with 5, 4, 3 and 2 minute recoveries, and supposedly doing those as hard as you can, is another very good session to see how they're doing.
Okay, good. Training in the summer or the winter? When do you enjoy going out training, summer or winter?
Really, both the same. It's just you've got to wear more clothes in the winter, and perhaps have an umbrella if you're lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, from the weather point of view, the summer is much more enjoyable. But if you can see that you're getting the results, then the winter can also be very, very good. So I don't really have a preference, as I say, unless you ask me at that moment when the rain is coming in horizontally and it's just turning to ice instead of rain, I might be tempted to say, yeah, no, give me the summer then.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, this is the end of our interview, Roger. Unless there is something you want to add on to it, the people you want to appreciate, you want to mention, say thank you or what have you. I mean, this is the end of our interview. Is there anything you want to add to? Is there anything you want to share with us?
I think thank yous. The big thank you is to all the athletes that have thought I was good enough as a coach for them to entrust their hopes to me over the years.
Yeah.
They probably don't realize just how much they have given me. The idea that people trust you to that extent, they trust you with their hopes and aspirations. And at Christmas, they give you a card, or as has just happened, one of my athletes has moved away because she's going to be living too far away to come to the training sessions. And she came round on Sunday to say goodbye and gave me a card with the whole of the inside filled with writing as a thank you from her. That is worth its weight in gold. The other things that stick in my mind are the fact that, okay, I'm very fortunate insofar as I had a couple of events in life which enabled me to pay my mortgage off early. So I've been lucky enough to be able to afford to go around the globe to major athletics events over the past 20 years. And, you know, some of those, I mean, you know, some of them I wouldn't want to go back to.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, going and meeting athletes, there was an American long jump champion who was in Japan, I think it was.
Yeah.
In when the World Championships were in Osaka. We used to bump. He was there as a pundit, a reporter, and we used to bump into him on the platform waiting for the train back in to town from the stadium every day. Got to know him very well. To have been privileged to see some guy called Bolt hurtling around the place, setting world records one after another, and we were even there on his infamous disqualification for a false start.
Yeah.
But that was amazing to see him, because when we were there, when he broke the world record for 100 meters, we were watching from our seats by the start line of the 1500 meters. And as with all sprinters, you know, they don't stop immediately, they slow down. And he didn't actually stop until he got to virtually opposite us. In other words, it took him the whole of the bend to slow down. But we've seen Mo running. Well, we know Mo anyway.
Yeah.
Mo is a friend. To have friends like that, to have known a coach, been privileged to have been mentored by the great Frank Horwill. Yeah, an amazing coach who knew so much about so many aspects. It was amazing. Yeah, it's been good. Hopefully it will continue for another couple of years anyway.
Yeah, okay. Well, I would like to take this time to thank you very much, Roger. I personally, you mentored me. I've worked with you for a lot of years. You helped me through to catch into the coaching ladder and all these things. And I appreciate so much, me plus all the squad and all the athletes that we still coach. And it doesn't matter, you know, what level you are at sometimes as an athlete. If you stay in the sports, you can come in as a very good coach, you can come in as a very good official, and we all have roles to play in our sports. And I thank you so much for your time. And I thank everyone else for taking their time to watch this video. So thank you very much, Roger. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Cheers. Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
We just made it. The battery's about to die on my phone.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Goodbye.